The euro surges after an ECB official calls for gradual rate cuts. A world conference in South Korea aims to tackle plastic pollution and introduce bold measures to limit production and save our oceans. And we look at how humanoid robots are reshaping industries worldwide. Hello, I'm Taiba Aydin with the latest business and finance news here on TRT World. The euro held on to its sharpest rise in 4 months on Thursday, following hawkish remarks from a central bank policymaker. ECB board member Isabel Schnabel told Bloomberg overnight that rate cuts should be gradual and move to neutral, not accommodative territory. Investors pulled back on rate cut bets, sending the euro up 0.7% to around $1.06. Meanwhile, the yen powered towards its strongest week in 3 months on growing bets that Japan could hike interest rates next month. European markets closed lower on Wednesday as investors continue to assess the potential impact of President-elect Donald Trump's plans to hike tariffs and fresh US inflation data. Let's get more on this now with Jamil Ahmed, Chief Analyst at GTC. Good to see you, Jamil. Now, markets paired bets on ECB rate cuts after Schnabel's comments. What would a so-called neutral approach look like for the ECB?
From my perspective, a neutral approach would be that there's a reality that all central bank and interest rate policy directions right now are subject to change. And I would not look too much into these comments that have come in overnight for a few different reasons. Number one, part of the euro appreciation has been because of profit taken on the greenback, the US dollar, as we head into Thanksgiving holidays, which are taking place today in the United States, which means financial markets are closed there, and a shorter trading day tomorrow. That has resulted in somewhat of a bounce higher in the euro dollar. We should not forget that number two, the euro has fallen back towards its lowest levels of 2024. We fell from 109 to 104 over the month of November. And thirdly, when it comes to the global macro environment, we have to watch the situation in Eastern Europe, Russia and Ukraine. Unfortunately, the situation has escalated, which means there's more downside risks for the European economy, which will tilt the hand of the ECB in one way or another. And then finally, that we are going to have America First and Make America Great policies version 2 starting in a matter of weeks and short months. We are likely to see more trade tariffs, a stronger US dollar, more America's insular stance for investors where they're going to prefer US assets, which does means that the European economy will face headwinds and that we should actually expect and look for more pressure on the euro currency.
And you mentioned those impending US tariffs. What impact would that have on Europe's already slowing economy?
It won't be good at all. We already know the European economy is the signal of the developed nations. We could have this interview today or have this interview 12 years ago. The matter of the fact is that the EU economy still has not recovered from a global financial crisis, which was close to 2 decades ago, which is why ECB policy and European Central Bank policy and so forth has always been subject to different changes. Ultimately, although European Union economy is not yet in the crossfires of the impending tariffs, which have already been announced with different US trading partners, it is a matter of time before that administration starts looking at European Union products and so forth, which means more pressure on European economic goods. And of course, as those tariffs initially look like they're going to be attacked from the perspective of Chinese products, Mexican products, and I think it was Canada products, that means that those types of companies will not be able to maybe potentially import as many products from the European Union as revenues and budget streams change. So generally, this impending trade tariffs that are going to come into play and so forth, it's not going to be good for the global economy. And finally, we should remember that when the trade war and the trade tariffs started in that first administration, it did contribute towards the lowest levels of global trade and global economic growth for a number of years. And I will expect those types of trends to likely resume.
All right, Jamil Ahmed, we will have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your analysis. Now, delegates from 175 countries have come together in Busan, South Korea, to address one of the planet's most pressing issues, plastic pollution, with critical decisions on the table from limiting plastic production to promoting sustainable recycling. The outcome of these talks could reshape how nations combat the growing crisis. Over 400 million tons of plastic are produced annually, with less than 10% being recycled. Without intervention, global production is expected to hit 736 million tons by 2040, a 70% increase from 2020. Plastic pollution impacts 700 marine species, with some plastics taking up to 600 years to decompose. 66 countries, led by Norway and Rwanda, advocate for a treaty limiting plastic production and improving waste management. Plastic-producing nations, including Saudi Arabia, oppose caps and favour recycling-focused measures. Island nations call for ambitious agreements to tackle rising production and its devastating effects on the oceans. Nations agree on redesigning plastics to improve recycling and reduce wastes. Provisions for financial support aim to assist countries in implementing treaty requirements. A UN Environment Programme highlights this treaty as a historic opportunity to address the production and subsequent pollution of plastics. Joining me now is Osama Rizvi in Lahore. He's an energy and economic analyst at Primary Vision. Thanks for being with us, Osama. Firstly, what's being proposed here by nations to tackle this global plastic waste crisis?
Thank you for having me today. The measures being proposed are quite drastic for some countries. First of all, the countries are proposing to limit the use of single-use plastic. There is a whole thing about the whole life cycle process of plastics. We need to recycle more plastic. There is a thing called enhanced producer responsibility, wherein the plastic-producing countries will be responsible for the environmental cost of the plastic they produce. And there are design measures also being proposed in terms of packaging and the production of various products. But all of these measures are easier said than done. We have seen that the COP29 in Baku also didn't, it essentially failed. And I'm thinking that I don't know what will be the future of the plastic treaty that is being proposed right now.
And what are the main challenges that are holding up negotiations to reach a consensus?
Well, it is always the interests, right? There are plastic producing countries like China, Saudi Arabia, and others. And then there are countries like small islands, which are essentially being negatively affected, adversely affected by the marine pollution. So it all comes down to the political economy of such things. And I believe it's not very easy for these countries to have that sort of a bargaining power in international community. And I believe the challenges are international rules and regulations, the heft, the economic heft, the economic clout many countries have on international negotiations. I believe there are some steps that can be taken on individual domestic levels, but for a global plastic treaty to be successful, it will take some more time.
And how do differing national interests impact the potential effectiveness of a potential treaty?
Well, it's always whether you putting the food on the table first before looking at the environmental other impacts. So if you talk about those countries like China, like Saudi Arabia, they have these giga projects planned, and for them, the national imperative, the economic imperative precedes any other environmental concerns. And I believe this plays out really bad for the countries that are being affected by the plastic pollution. So that's what happens in every other domain of international relations as well. And I believe we need a coordinated effort by the international governments, a binding agreement that puts things into perspective.
Okay, Osama Rizvi, we will have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's get more on this by travelling to the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo now, where plastic waste is not only clogging the Ruzizi hydroelectric dam, but it's also causing power cuts and disrupting businesses. Obaida Hito has the story.
It might look like these plastic bottles have been collected and assembled for recycling, but these hundreds of bottles, jerry cans, and other debris are all waste. And they are choking the life out of the Ruzizi hydroelectric dam, situated at the southern end of Lake Kivu, while causing endless disruption all around, particularly at the National Electricity Company.
This waste practically blocks the water. Water has difficulty entering the forced conduits to provide the pressure and speed required for the machines. During this time, we reach our limit. We are forced to shut down the machines and start removing the waste, clearing the grates. And when we stop the machines, power outages also occur.
Here we have 4 machines, and together these 4 machines produce a total of 29.8 megawatts. This waste materials affects all 4 machines at once. That's why the cleaning operation for the grates and machines take around 6 to 7 hours. On each machine, we might spend around 2.5 hours, or 2 hours if we work faster and there is not too much trash.
And local businesses have not been spared either.
Our bosses are pressing us because of delays in completing their orders, and we don't know what to do. The workshop is here, but we can't do any welding when there is no power. People tell us the power is out because of plastic bottles, but we don't know what to do about these bottles. If only there were a way to clear out these bottles so we could have electricity.
Divers often have to clean the bottom of the river to prevent turbines from becoming blocked up by waste accumulating at a depth of 14 meters.
We urge the population to monitor and properly manage household waste, because if they leave this waste lying in the street, in the gutters, it ends up at the Ruzizi Dam, and this creates a lot of difficulties for us.
But the waste poses an even greater danger to people's health and the environment here. Obeidehito, TRT World.
Now let's take a quick look at some of the other top business stories from around the world. South Korea's central bank surprised markets by cutting its benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points to 3%, marking the first back-to-back rate cut since 2009. The reduction comes amid concerns over economic growth, signaling a shift in the central bank's policy. The Bank of Korea also revised its GDP growth forecast for 2024 down to 2.2% from a previous 2.4%. Brazil's public debt now exceeds 78% of its GDP, prompting concerns about the country's fiscal stability. In response, the government has announced a nearly $12 billion cut in public spending for 2025 and 2026. To soften the impact of these cuts, the administration has also pledged to introduce tax reductions for middle-income Brazilians. The US Federal Trade Commission has reportedly launched a wide-ranging antitrust investigation into software giant Microsoft. According to Reuters, the probe will focus on the company's cloud computing and software licensing practices. Microsoft had faced FTC resistance to its $69 billion acquisition of video game publisher Activision Blizzard, which closed in 2023. And Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg has dined with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, signaling efforts to mend ties after years of tensions. Their relations were strained following Facebook's ban on Trump following the January 6 Capitol attack. The president-elect's advisor praised Zuckerberg's commitment to supporting America's national renewal under Trump's leadership. In the past year, prices in Ireland have risen 10%. There are record levels of homelessness, and students are spending more time commuting than studying. Anger at the lack of affordable homes is not only creating frustration, but is fueling hostility towards certain groups. TRT World's Victoria Inez sent this report from the capital, Dublin.
Ireland's housing costs are among some of the highest in the EU. But it's in the capital of Dublin that the crisis is felt most acutely.
House prices are up 10% in the year to September. Rental prices have softened a little bit, but they're still rising 4 or 5%. And that comes really on the back of many years of outsized increases in spite of rent controls. So the property market is really hot and horrible for those trying to find a home to live in or one to rent.
Here, 2/3 of young people still live with their parents. More than 1/3 of others are considering leaving. and homelessness has reached record levels.
And you get people may move out and then they have to move back, and I mean, that's difficult if you're living in your childhood bedroom and you're in your 30s, it's a bit soul destroying. Absolutely, yeah, you can't get your life going,
Landlord came in and he just gave us like 7 days notice, saying that we just need to get out in 7 days. How am I supposed to find a room or like somewhere to stay in 1 week in Dublin?
Somebody else will say, I'll pay 50k more for that house, and then you should say, if you really want the house, you should say, I'll pay 60k more. So the price keeps climbing, so you might end up paying 100k more.
Part of the problem is its growing population. Experts say Ireland needs to build more than 50,000 homes every year if supply is to keep up with demand. No wonder then that it's the main battleground for politicians in Friday's general election.
People in Dublin tell me they are being priced out. Many of them can't even dream of ever owning their own home, born in a place they can't afford to live in. The result is an increase in hostility, especially towards things like immigration.
Left unsolved, I'm told it's a problem which will only get worse.
I suppose prolonged pressure, whereby families are remaining, multiple generations of people are living under one roof for much longer than they should. And all of those things are far from satisfactory.
As people here prepare to vote, many say whoever wins must act decisively or risk further alienating a public who are desperate for solutions. Victoria Innes, TRT World, Dublin.
Machines that think, move and even paint like humans are no longer science fiction. Humanoid robots powered by AI are taking centre stage in industries across the globe. But how are they changing the business world? Lara Kılıçarslan has the details.
The rise of AI-powered humanoid robots is changing industries at a record pace. These robots are not just performing tasks, they are reshaping markets. Over 30 companies gathered in Nancy, France, to showcase their latest machines. The technology is evolving fast, blending human-like form and intelligent AI systems. This means they can learn, adapt, and perform complex tasks.
So the robots now are more robust, more efficient, more performing, and also the cost has decreased, which enables more companies, more labs to produce new prototypes. And so we are really witnessing a huge revolution, a huge increase in the number of startups and number of companies that produce new platforms.
The global market for these robots is expected to grow by $17 billion from 2024 to 2028. Tech giants like Microsoft, Google, and Nvidia are splashing billions into AI, further fueling their rise. Meanwhile, funding for AI companies across the US and Europe is set to reach about $80 billion by the end of this year. Elon Musk also predicts 10 billion humanoid robots will replace humans by 2040.
If the pace of building robots and improving their performance and decreasing the cost continues with the same trend of these last years, maybe in 5-10 years we can see like robots that are really cheap and that you can buy and they can do stuff.
These advances go beyond just making robots cheaper and easier to access. AI and engineering together mean they achieve tasks once thought impossible. In aerospace, they assist astronauts and explore challenging environments. They also support elder care and help with rehabilitation in healthcare services. Ultimately, experts say the possibilities are endless.
My view is that robots are a piece of technology that are there to improve our lives, make our lives easier, better, healthier, and I only see the positive side.
As they become smarter and more capable, companies are adding advanced features, making them more human-like. In factories, they are already transforming production, making them more than just machines, ushering in a new era in AI innovation. Lara Kılıçarslan, TRT World.
Chinese electric vehicles are shaking up the auto industry. Former dominant global players in the sector are now struggling to compete. And now with US President-elect Donald Trump set to impose tariffs on foreign car makers, will Chinese car makers continue their meteoric rise? Emre Boz reports.
From sedans to SUVs and now to pickup trucks. BYD's latest model, the Shark, is the first hybrid EV on the market, making its debut release in Brazil last month. But the interesting thing about this model is that it's a car designed to attract the US consumer. Pickups account for about 18% of total vehicles sold in the US. And right now, the best-selling pickup trucks are the Ford F-Series. But Ford is under fire, with BYD beating it in the total number of global sales in the third quarter of this year, a gap just shy of more than 1.13 million sales. Already, as an EV manufacturer, China's BYD tops the lists, followed by Tesla and Volkswagen. But it looks like Germany's Volkswagen is also heading for tough times. Workers there are on strike, angry at the company's decision to close 3 factories. Managers are saying costs are too high and production too low. Analysts say it's because demand is being met by more affordable Chinese EVs. Market share of Chinese EV sales in Europe rose from 1.9% in 2020 to more than 14% in the second quarter of this year.
It's very mixed feelings. There is hope, but we also fear for our jobs. We are angry at the managers. They missed the boat. While China did their homework, our managers overslept, and now they want to let us go. I don't think that's good at all.
Germany is simply struggling in the auto sector, and in order to stay competitive, they've decided to partner with American EV maker Rivian. But as Chinese car makers climb the ranks, the European Union has responded by hiking tariffs as much as 45.3% last month. And with the coming of US President-elect Donald Trump, he may also raise tariffs on imported cars and increase investment into EV car makers like Tesla. This all part of his America First policy. This is bad news for Chinese car makers. But at least for now, the gap between BYD and Tesla looks too wide to close. Emre Boz, TRT World.
Earlier this week, a regional high court in South Africa dismissed an application to compel officials to help the illegal miners still holed up in an abandoned mine. While the miners are being denied food, water and medicine, a judge ruled the police response has been measured, considered and proportional. Tashego Fatso Magolego reports.
Tandega Tom does not know if her brother Ayanda is dead or alive. He has been trapped in this mine for 4 months. She says things are worse now that the authorities have taken over the community's rescue efforts.
Even if the system as a community we were using, it was slow, but one thing that I know, each time we throw the rope down there, it came out with the person. So now we are stuck in a position whereby they are saying that they are going with phrases. And the phrases, it seems like it's more slower than us.
It has been almost 2 weeks since a task team was appointed to bring the illegal miners to surface. As many as 4,000 illegal miners, or zamazamas as they are known here, could be in this disused mine in Stilfontein in South Africa's northwest province. But officials estimate that up to 400 of them have been underground for months. There are concerns about the well-being of the zamazamas after police recently cut off their supply to food and water.
I'm assuming that his condition is very bad. It's very bad. I'm hoping that he's still alive. Yes, I can't say that I'm expecting anything. I don't want to expect anything. I want to expect my brother alive.
Following intelligence that we received from one of the volunteers here, they explained to us how bad the conditions are in there, detailing that a lot of people are sick whilst others are dead.
Since last weekend, 34 zamazamas have been arrested as they resurfaced. The youngest was just 14 years old, and at least 96 of the more than 1,200 illegal miners arrested are from neighboring countries such as Mozambique, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and Lesotho. Miners that have surfaced say many of them are sick and that they are being forced to dig for gold in exchange for food and water. Their families are accusing the authorities of being heavy-handed with them, whilst the government says a rescue operation is in its final planning stage. Tshegofatso Magolego, TRT World, Stilfontein, South Africa.
Well, that's all your business news for now. Thanks for watching.